Digital A11Y Insights, your accessibility partner. Accessibility for all, technology for everyone.
So hi everyone, welcome to the sixth session in Accessibility Learning and Connect. And in our last session, we discussed about labels, the visible labels, programmatic labels, the accessible name computation with ARIA labeled by, providing a title attribute to the form of control. We also discussed how to use ARIA described by to bind it with the form control. And we also saw how radio buttons work when there is name attribute, when there is no name attribute, how the keyboard focus is very different from. So what in this today's session, what we will cover is we'll understand checkboxes, we'll understand field set and legend, the grouping of form controls, and how screen readers behave with grouping of form controls. We'll see various techniques both with HTML and ARIA. A- Any questions from the last session? Okay, then I'll move forward. So
Windows M desktop. Outlook button activate. Quick Firefox window button activate. Space test page full digital label by Mozilla Firefox. Test page full digital label. Same page link skip content. Main region article region. Mail radio button not checked. Mail gender. Password must be a characters minimum be strong.
we
Slower.
created some of these examples over here. So we stopped at the radio buttons. Okay, I'll just move to NVDA.
Unloading JAWS. Quick JAWS dialog. Are you sure you want the quick JAWS? Press enter. Quick now or save enter. Test page full digital label by Mozilla Firefox.
Welcome to NVDA dialog. OK button. Test page bulk. Preview in new tab 1 of 1. Edit page test page. No next edit field. Out of main landmark clickable HTML. Less PID equals F2 greater. This is a sample image description. Less slash form great. Less input type equals radio ARIA label equals female name equals gender greater. Less label greater female. Less slash label greater. Less slash form greater. Less input line greater. Line feed.
Okay, I'm using
Less BR greater spelling out of line feed. Less BR greater select line greater line feed. Less.
So now what we're doing is we are creating some form fields. And what we will do is we'll use checkboxes. Then we will see how the legend and field set attribute work and how this will impact the overall accessibility of grouped form controls. Till now, what we have seen is we have seen individual form controls like, first name, last name, email address, and password. And if there is a group, like they all belong to one particular parent group, we will bind them and see how screen reader behaves.
Less spelling error. Less. Line feed. Less. Less. Line feed. SPAN greater. CAOOLE OLR less slash SPAN greater. Less INPUT STYPE equals quote CHECKBOX quote greater.
Now, if you see, I opened the checkbox first, then I will write the label. But we discussed about this for both radio button and checkboxes. The form control should be the first thing and then the label. Whereas when it comes to text fields, select elements and other things, the form control should be after the label attribute. The visible label should be after. Like even in DOM, when you read with arrow keys, it should come, the form label should come first, then the text field form label, which is the visible label, and then the text field select element. But only for radio buttons, it should say the radio button and then the form label.
Less input type equals checkbox greater. Greater line feed. Less LABEL space ARIA dash LABEL equals quote RED quote greater. R E D less slash L A B E L greater greater
I gave the label wrong.
red great label equals ARIA select label equals selected red greater selected great quote unselected quote
It should be
less
for the
type
input.
equal checkbox greater less H E K B O X quote greater space D E red great label ARIA less input type equals checkbox ARIA label equals red greater less label greater red less slash label greater
Okay.
less input type greater line fee less type checkbox
Yeah, I'll fix it.
less type checkbox ARIA label red greater less quote equals L equal quote R E R E D greater G R E E N quote N quote greater red less slash L label A B E L space quote greater R great quote greater R E D less G R E E N slash L A less input left type E checkbox H ARIA label red greater less quote R E D greater quote greater red label greater slash greater red less slash E R greater quote greater space L space greater.
Is it fixed now?
The input type of checkbox green still has the space in the label.
Less input type left type checkbox ARIA label equals A B E L
It's
equals
label.
quote label equal dash L A B E L equals label ARIA space A R I A.
Can
No,
someone
not
tell
the
me?
ARIA label, the label element.
The label.
Label equals dash
Yeah.
A green label less L A B E L space greater space greater G.
Okay,
This
yes.
is good.
It's
Yeah.
now.
Okay, so now we'll
Out of it read doc clickable save draft but saving unavailable draft test page bullet busy test page bullet.
So what we did is we created two checkboxes and we opened a span. They said choose color and we created two checkboxes. One is red and one is green. Now in the first session we discussed if you have to go to a checkbox on a table, checkbox on a page, you just press X. Either in JAWS or in NVIDIA, you press X, it will go to the checkboxes.
Clickable links, main landmark red checkbox not checked. Green checkbox not checked.
So I just pressed X and it said red checkbox not checked, green checkbox not checked.
No next checkbox.
It said no next checkbox. That's the last checkbox in the this thing. We use arrow keys and we'll see how the behavior is.
Red checkbox not choose color.
So I'm near choose color. I'm pressing down arrow.
Checkbox not checked red.
I'm pressing down arrow again.
Red.
Now I'll press down arrow again.
Checkbox not checked green. Green.
So in last session, one participant asked, when you use arrow keys, the form control label is red once and next the visible label. Is that a failure? No, it is not, because we used ARIA label here. Okay, whenever you use ARIA label, this will happen. And even if you use for and ID attribute also, it will happen sometimes. Like I haven't seen the consistent behavior when you use, but when I use ARIA label, definitely, and ARIA labeled by also because you bind the attributes there using. Okay, that's not a failure. And the other thing is, if you see this,
checkbox red. Checkbox not checked red.
it says checkbox not checked.
Red checkbox not checked.
The check and not checked is a state. So you have to be very mindful. Any checkbox you encounter, first check if it is, you can check it and not uncheck it. So use spacebar.
Checked.
It says checked.
Not checked. Checked. Not checked.
Then I'll tab
Green
again.
Checkbox not checked. Checked. Not checked.
So last time we discussed in radio buttons, you use arrow keys, up arrow, down arrow, left arrow, right arrow to navigate within the set of radio buttons. Whereas in checkbox, you can't. We have to tap to each element. We'll just go to radio buttons to see that behavior once.
Red check. Female radio button not checked 2 of 2.
Raga?
Yes.
Did I have a question?
Yes.
My understanding is that we should use labels with checkboxes and then associate them using the ID and core attributes. I noticed that you use area label instead.
Yes.
I don't
Oh,
understand. Is it a better way?
no, I used it because it's easy and convenient as of now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Just for example, because we are not, we already covered the fur and ID attribute in the last session. That is the best optimal approach. Like if you want to do labeling for form controls, I would always you'd say you use fur and ID attribute. For this
Yes.
example, I
Okay.
thought it's easy to do it, so that's why I used ARIA label.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Red checkbox not. Female radio button not checked 2 of 2.
So if you see, it said female radio button not checked 2 of 2. But the same behavior you don't see in checkboxes.
Red checkbox not checked.
You will not know how many items are there. Okay. So, and remember, for both radio button and checkbox, you have a state.
Female radio button not checked 2 of 2.
If I press space now,
Space, checked. Male radio button checked 1 of 2.
once it is checked, and if I press up arrow and down arrow, that state will keep continuing to the radio button. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I'm moving.
it's clear.
Yeah. I'm moving to the next topic, which is like grouping of labels, group labels.
Gender.
So if you see, this is gender.
Radio button checked male, male. Radio button not checked female, female. Choose color. Checkbox not checked red.
So you have gender and choose color. There are two things. But when I press tab,
Green checkbox red checkbox male radio button confirm password edit has auto. Male radio button checked 1 of 2.
so how will a user know that this is for gender
Red checkbox not checked.
and this is for choose color? How will I know that the above thing is specifically asking about gender, or it can be anything, correct? It doesn't have to be always gender. It can be to which gender you are buying clothes for, or you need to understand the context. I always say when you look at a page, understand the context of the content that is there. Don't simply test a radio button or a checkbox or form fields without understanding the context of the page. So you have to go through the form control both in browse mode and forms mode quickly. And this is what we call discovery. We discussed about this. You need to discover the entire page, and then it becomes easy for you to raise the bugs. So now this association is not there. The gender and choose color association is not there here. So what we are going to do is we in HTML, we have something called field set that group the form controls. So we're going to use the field set.
Edit page test. Out of clickable section editable 1. Clickable section editable 1. Out of make clickable paragraph block doc. Clickable HTML. Edit less input type equals less span greater less spelling error less span greater choose color less spelling error br greater line fee less FIELDSET greater less spelling error field set greater less span less input type equals checkbox less input less slash form greater less in line greater line less slash FIELDSET greater less slash spelling error field set greater out of list read doc click save draft saving test page bullet digital A11Y document checkbox not checked busy test page bullet clickable main landmark green link skip main landmark male radio button not checked gender main landmark article male radio button not checked 1 of 2.
So now I'm slow down a little bit.
Rate 95 rate 90 rate 85 rate 80.
So now when I press tab, observe what will happen, how the screen reader is behaving here.
Female radio button not checked 2 of 2. Red checkbox not checked.
No, I did a mistake.
Female radio button not checked 2 of 2. Red checkbox not checked. Choose color. Edit page.
Yeah.
Out of read. Make clickable HTML edit multi-line less div role equals. Editor less slash spelling error field set greater less slash spelling error
Sorry, I think you
Yes.
need to convert the span to a legend, right? Fieldsets legend. So the choose color is supposed to be a legend.
Sorry, I gave it wrong. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but without legend also it should say group. Let's see how it's
Okay.
yeah how
Exit NVDA dialog.
minute.
What would you edit page tab run.j s JAWS 2020 exit NV
There is a spell error on opening tag.
yeah
That's why it is. There is
Pause.
double L instead
yes
PC cursor.
I
Escape.
thought
Yes,
so.
yes,
Virtual PC
yes.
cursor.
There
Edit
is.
page left add title paragraph. HTML edit contains space. HTML edit bottom of file. Let's misspell image. Let's input type equals. Let's input less ambiguous color. Let's misspell field clear. Home less misspell I E L L
Yes.
L. Number off. Virtual PC cursor. Edit page expand toggle button. Document design save draft button. Preview button menu left. Save draft button. Enter. Edit page left quote. Test page full digital A11Y. Link log out. F5.
I'm more
Test page full digital.
proficient with JAWS and it becomes easy.
Test page full digital A11. Radio button not checked. Gender. Password must be a characters minimum be strong. Follow primary radio button not checked. 1 of 2. Main region article region. Main radio button not checked. Female radio button not checked. 2 of 2. Slower. Red checkbox not checked. To check press choose color. Female radio button not checked. 2 of 2. F5. Test page bullet. Mail radio button not checked. 1 of 2. Page adding test. Main region article region. Red checkbox not checked. To check press spacebar. Choose color.
Okay, right.
Test page left quote. Test preview button menu left.
We'll take
Test page
this
bullet.
and
Control L navigation toolbar. Search with copy selection of Windows M desktop folder full taskbar. JAWS 2020. Zoom dash 1. Google Chrome dash 1 space. Dashboard single left pointing. Control L toolbar. Advanced search. Paste from clipboard. HE. Enter. Test page bullet digital A11Y dash Google Chrome. Green checkbox not checked. To check press spacebar. Page has 7 regions. 4 edits and 41 links. Test. Test page bullet digital red checkbox not checked. Choose color. Female. Female radio button not checked. 2 male. Male radio button not checked. 1 of 2. Main control password. To change the selection press over down arrow. Male radio button not checked. 1 of 2. Test page bullet digital A11Y red checkbox not checked. To check press spacebar.
so without legend the field set is not.
Windows M desktop folder view list view not taskbar JAWS 2020 outlook button to activate press spacebar. Firefox table space search with Google Render resident combo collapse HTTPS edit page left quote test page right quote single virtual PC cursor save draft button edit page add title paragraph HTML edit contains text space content bottom of file let's slash misspell fields creator home less slash misspell I E L E S E T reader
Okay.
let's input type equals quote checkbox let's input type let's add reader choose color let's slash add reader let's misspell fields creator end blank reader home less misspell I E L E S E T reader end blank reader end blank enter less L E G E N D reader let's add reader choose color end blank reader end blank enter less slash L E G E N D reader. Let's add reader choose color. Let's legend reader. Let's add reader choose color. Let's legend reader. Number on. Number off. Virtual PC cursor. Edit page left expand toggle block on new button. Document design library save draft button. Enter. Enter top bar region. Save draft button. To activate press enter. Navigation toolbar. Search with Google F5. Test page bullet digital A11Y message top 11Y.
I have to slow this
Slower.
down.
Slower. Search with Google X. Escape collapsed. Shift F6. Test page bullet same page link skip content.
That's
Unloading
just-
pause. Enter.
OK button test page clickable link main landmark choose color out of grouping radio button not checked female main landmark female radio button not checked 2 of 2
Now if I press tab again,
choose color grouping red checkbox not checked
if you're seeing the field set is there, without legend, the field set is not even being recognized. But when I give the legend attribute,
female
now observe what is happening when I press tab.
choose color grouping red checkbox not checked
It said choose color grouping red checkbox not checked. So what we did is using the field set, we grouped these elements. So you give the field set.
edit page test page out of clickable HTML less input less span less legend less spelling error field set
So I opened the field set tag before the group label, which is the choose color. OK, open it there, then use the legend.
less legend greater less span greater choose color less slash span greater
That is the group label that we used.
less slash legend greater
I close the legend tag.
less input type equals checkbox
This is the checkboxes.
less slash spelling error field set greater
And I close the field set. Is this clear?
Yes,
Clear.
yes.
Raghava,
some
I have
people-
more question.
Yes.
So here, yeah, the coding is clear for us. But is it required to read 1 of 2, 2 of 2 for
In
these checkbox?
no, it is not.
Okay.
For checkboxes, it will not read also. It is not required. Only in radio buttons it will read because it is a composite widget. Like in radio button, what happens is at any given point of time, you can select only one and you have to use arrow keys. Like first tab will take you into the radio button. when you press tab again, you'll move out of the radio button element set only completely.
Got it.
Okay.
Understood. Okay.
Less input, less input,
Satish, I
less
have a
slash
question
legend.
here.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
I have a question here. Mostly like we are talking about radio buttons and checkboxes, right? Field set legend. So
Mhm.
normally here you are explaining like it is control should come later and the label should come first, right? But if you take Gmail as an example, the behavior with in Gmail for the checkboxes and the behavior of JAWS with the checkboxes is a little more different. If you see, the control comes first and the like actual label comes later. What is that? Is it like, can we consider that as an like, is it a problem or like kind of what?
I think you understood what I'm trying to communicate incorrectly, because what I said is for checkboxes and radio buttons, the visible label is always that comes after the control, which we explained in Gmail. It comes after the control. Here also it is after the control. Only for text fields, it
Okay.
should be before the control. Text field, select elements, it should be before the control. For checkboxes and radio
Okay.
buttons, so visually how it will be is like, first you see the visible label, then the text field, first name text field, last name text field. You'll see the group label gender. Then you see it will be either an icon or can be a circle or something with a no mark, like it will be just a dot, and you'll see male, female, other, or whatever. And when a person checks it, you'll see a small tick mark visually, which will be in green color. That signifies you selected this. See, UI UX, how people design, it's very different. Like, you can use design practices, varied design practices. People use different icons, different methods of conveying the same information. So that's why I say look at the page, not from just from the UI perspective, also from the perspective of someone who is looking as a screen reader user. What happens is you understand the controls. Generally, what is happening is when people take visual assistance, they say, okay, I see an icon here, I see the male, I see an icon, I see female. But you don't get the site. Someone who is blind, if the site assistant who is not experienced, they think it's an icon, where it can be a radio button or a checkbox with CSS designed as such. Just give me a second and get some water. Is this clear, Shivasulaj?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
Now, what we will do is we'll give the group label using the ARIA. So we gave it for the checkboxes. Now we'll use ARIA and provide the group label. Okay. For the radio buttons.
Less span great, less legend greater, less input type equals radio, less spelling error br greater, less span greater gender, less slash span greater. Less spelling error br greater line, less div greater, less span less div greater space ro e equals quote gro up quote.
Okay.
Less input type equals radio, less spelling error br greater, less blank, less input blank, less slash div greater, less input less slash div greater.
So I just gave the group.
Less span less div less spelling less div role equals group greater.
I gave a role of group. Okay. For the entire div that is having the radio buttons. So let's see how screen reader behaves now. If you observe, I did not give the legend, like I did not give the accessible name still.
Out of edit, out of document clickable save draft but saving test page bullet busy draft saved test page bullet digit clickable mainland gender password must be 8 characters mainland male radio button not checked 1 of 2 female radio button not checked 2 of 2 choose female radio.
So it's again not identifying. Well, let's see. let's bind it
Out
now.
of region. Clickable HTML edit multi-line less div role equals list greater. Editor less span greater gender less div role equals group greater. Line greater. Space ARIA dash LABEL equals quote GEDER quote.
Okay.
Out of lit read doc click save draft saving test page bullet busy. Test page, clickable main landmark, clickable toolbar navigation main landmark gender, male, radio button, gender, out of, grouping password, confirm password, main landmark, article, gender grouping, male radio button not checked 1 of 2. Female radio button not checked 2 of 2. Choose color grouping red check, gender grouping, female radio button not checked 2 of 2.
Everyone observe that?
Yes, I
So,
did.
so
Yes, yes.
even in ARIA, when you give role group, it should just say grouping start, grouping end, but it is not even exposing the grouping both in ARIA and even in HTML. Like I remember in earlier versions of Screen Reader, they can just say, even if the legend is not there, they say grouping, through which I understand, you can understand that there is a group level label somewhere. But now it is not even exposing that. So you have to use browse mode to see. And even here, even when I give role group, I give ARIA label. You can use ARIA labeled by also. And bind the span. If you see here, the code.
Edit page. Edit clickable HTML. Less spelling error B. Less div role equals group ARIA label equals gender greater. Less span greater gender less slash span greater.
So I can use the ARIA labeled by, give an ID to the span and use it. So when you code, okay, when you give solutions, you also need to understand with which framework or whichever framework you are working, how difficult it is to change the code there. See, you understand you give role equals to group ARIA label or ARIA labeled by, or you can use field set and legend. But with minimal effort, how can you fix that? Is also something that developers want to understand. And there should not be a lot of ambiguity on how to fix it. Like when they write the code, it should be semantic. It should get it fixed, and you should be able to test it quickly. Any questions still here?
No, I understand clearly.
Okay. So now we used native controls for checkboxes and radio buttons. Okay, and you can build checkboxes and radio buttons using ARIA also, just on divs and spans. If you get any JavaScript framework that has only divs and spans, and you think something is a radio button, something is a checkbox, and you really can't use HTML, and you have to use ARIA. ARIA has that ability to convert any element into any native. It has like every native element also has an alternative that is in ARIA. Like you have role radio, role checkbox. So what we will do, we'll quickly see how role radio and role checkbox works.
Less spelling error IMG. Grade blank. Line feed blank. Less B R less div greater. Less spelling error BR less div greater. Grade blank. Less
Okay.
SPAN greater.
Tell me something. What should be the group label? Okay, I'll just put
C H O O S E
choose.
space N U N B E R F A T E N D E E S less slash S P A N greater. Less S P A N greater. 1 dash blank.
Yeah.
Number lock 5 5 dash 5 blank 5 blank. slash span greater less span greater 1 dash 1 0 less slash span greater less slash div greater less span greater 110 less slash span greater less span greater 15 less slash span greater less span greater choose number of attendees less slash span greater less div greater less span less span less slash div greater.
Okay. Now let's see what happens.
Out of it, read doc, click, save draft, saving unavailable, unavailable, draft save, test page busy, test page, clickable mainland, content visited link, accessibility audits visited link, main landmark choose color group green, out of grouping this is a sample image description, graphic full name this is a sample blank, choose number of attendees 15 110.
If you see, that is how it is read. Because we did not use break tags. One, the content is not semantically coming one after the other for screen reader. So let's fix that now.
Edit page test.
And if you see, it's just static content. So what we will do, we'll give a role of radio and we'll see how it works.
Out of read, clickable paragraph block document editable, clickable HD. Less span greater 110, less span greater, less div greater, less span line greater, line feet. Less br greater, less span greater 1, less 1 greater, space r o l e equals quote radio quote line greater, line feet, less br greater, less span less s 1 greater, space r o l e equals quote r a dio quote. Out of edit list redo doc click save draft saving test page bullet busy draft saved test page bullet did mainland blank graphic full name this is a sample image description blank content info landmark main landmark full name this is a blank choose number of attendees.
See now it did not read in one line because we used a break tag.
Radio button not checked 15. Radio button not checked 110. Radio button not checked 15. Radio button not checked 110.
I'm using just arrow keys here. Okay. If I press tab.
Content info landmark list with 4 items accessibility audits visited link.
If I shift tab now, it should go to radio button ideally, correct? That's the last thing in the page. If I do shift tab now, see what happens.
Main landmark choose color grouping green checkbox not checked.
So they don't get focus because here.
Edit. Out of read. Make clickable HTML. Less span role equals radio greater 110 less slash span greater.
They don't have something called tab index. For any custom control that we build, we need to use something called tab index attribute.
Less span role equal space role equals radio great quote 1 greater space.
If I give tab index now.
TABINDEX equals quote 0 quote less span role radio greater 1 greater space TABINDEX equals quote 0 quote.
So now I give for both tab index 0. Okay. But if you observe, they don't also have state, like you can't select them. Whenever you're building any custom control, either it is a checkbox or a radio button, it should have a state. For any custom control, there are things name, role, state, and the value. Which the name is the accessible name computation, which here it is coming 1-10, 2-10, that is the accessible name computation. Okay, or you can use ARIA label or ARIA labeled by, which will append to this particular form control. So for radio buttons, there is something called ARIA checked. For checkboxes also, there is ARIA checked. What I'll do.
Less span role equals radio role radio. Spelling error tab index 0 greater quote 0 quote greater space ARIA dash CHECKED equals quote TRUE quote
So I give tab index 0, ARIA checked true for the first radio button now. So let's see the experience with the screen reader.
Custom HTML block. Out of region main read doc click save draft saving unavailable unavailable. Test page bullet busy. Test page bullet digital A. Link skip to content. Main landmark choose color group green checkbox not checked.
So from here, if I tab, I have to go to the radio button. Let's see.
1.5 radio button checked 1 of 2.
If I press tab,
110 radio button not checked 2 of 2. Content info main landmark article 110 radio button not checked 2 of 2. 15 radio button checked 1 of 2.
but if I press up and down arrow, nothing will happen because that you have to provide with JavaScript. Even radio button, the ARIA checker true and false has to be dynamically appended through JavaScript. ARIA will not write the entire semantic code for you. It will just give the role, state, and it has some properties that you can use to build custom controls. But all the functionality.
Choose color grouping green, red check, gender grouping.
Here, whatever the functionality we are getting.
Male radio button, female radio button.
All this you have to write using JavaScript for any custom component.
Yes, that's why it's always better to use native HTML elements when you can.
Yes, that's the reason everyone routes for use HTML because you get everything inbuilt and there is very less possibility of committing mistakes out there.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So even here, if you see,
choose 1.5 radio.
I can just use role equal to group and ARIA label for this one.
Choose number of attendees. Edit page test page digital A11Y WordPress document. Out of region main clickable HTML edit. Less span role equals less span greater choose number of attendees /span less div greater.
So here if you see I already have the div tag here.
Less span greater choose number of less div line greater space ROFE equals quote CAOOSE space and UMBER OSATTEDEES quote. Less spelling, less div role equals choose number of attendees. Role choose quote equals quote.
I think I need more coffee.
GROUP space ARIA dash LABEL equals quote. Less div role equals group ARIA label equals choose number of attendees greater. Less span greater choose.
So now we'll see the same thing there.
Out of edit list read doc clickable save draft saving test page bullet digital A. Busy. Test page bullet clickable link log.
Yes, Srinivas.
Double quote is missing after role group.
Edit page.
Okay.
Out of clickable paragraph block document clickable less div role equals group role equals equal quote GROUP space P space.
Okay.
Quote P quote ARIA label equals ABEL equal quote.
Okay.
Line greater quote. Out of list read doc click save draft saving test page bullet busy draft saved test page bullet digital A11Y test page bullet digital A11 link skip link lock mainland choose color grouping green checkbox not checked.
Okay, we'll
choose number of attendees grouping 1.5 radio button checked 1 of 2.
You see that it appends again. Any questions still here?
No questions.
So what we'll do the custom checkbox and we'll close for today.
Edit page tab.
So what I'll do, I'll change the same. Yes.
Sorry, I have small doubt. So here we used a role radio on span, okay, to change the type of. Okay, So for example, if I am using native element button, okay, can I use a role button? If I have seen some developers are using a role also on the native element. Is it a redundancy or is
Yes.
it
You should
a
not.
problem?
Yes, it will be a problem.
Okay.
I'll explain you how it will change everything.
Document tools.
Okay.
What people think is if you give once you give role button, you need to again give JavaScript handlers. You remove the semantics of the native element. So I'll show you one
Yeah.
Out of
example.
tool. Clickable paragraph block document. Clickable HD.
So what I'll
Less
do,
slash less span role equals radio role equals radio quote R A D I O quote A E C K B O X less span greater choose num less span role equals checkbox less span role radio quote R A D I O quote C H E C K B O X.
okay, I did this. And to help Srinivas understand, what I will do is
Less spelling error img spelling less PID equals F less slash form less slash spelling error field set greater less input type equals checkbox ARIA label type checkbox ARIA label green greater less quote equals quote G label greater A L less greater quote greater space
I'm using role.
R O F E equals quote R A D I O quote.
I use role equal to radio. Okay, on this checkbox. I'll do the same for the above one also.
Less input type less line label red label greater less L less greater quote greater space R O L E equals quote R A D I O quote.
Okay.
Out of list document clickable save draft button.
Yes.
For this element. Yeah.
What?
For this element, we already have type equal to checkbox.
Yeah, you will see
And-
what happens when I give the role. I'm changing
Role.
the semantics of it using ARIA. So we are going to experience what will happen if you give native element, what happens, we'll see.
Document out of toolbar button save draft, saving unavailable. Draft saved. Test page bullet, busy. Test page bullet. No next radio, clickable links, banner landmark, main landmark, main, full name edit, password, confirm pass, gender grouping, male radio button not checked 1 of 2. Female radio button not checked 2 of 2. Choose color grouping, red radio button not checked 1 of 2. Green radio button not checked 2 of 2. Choose number of attendees grouping 1-5 checkbox checked. 110 checkbox not checked.
You see, Srinivas, first if you see this custom, I use the same.
1-5 checkbox. Choose color grouping. Green radio button not checked 2 of 2.
It says having input type checkbox. When I give radio, the whole semantics is broken.
Yeah.
It converts. So on any HTML element, if you provide ARIA, ARIA will take precedence over it. It will change the semantics. There are 5 rules of ARIA. One of the rule is don't change the native HTML semantics.
Okay.
If you have a button tag and you also use role button, that means you made it the button tag into a custom button, correct? So again here, if you see
space check.
See what happened.
Green radio button focused check 2 of 2. Red radio button space checked. Green radio button checked. Red radio button checked 1 of 2.
You see what happened? How can you check 2 radio buttons, correct?
Yeah. So we should avoid ARIA roles on the native elements. Yeah.
No,
So
even if you give it, see now if I have given this here, but I have to write JavaScript to make sure that these elements behave as radio buttons. I converted checkboxes into radio button, but if you be in the DOM still the checkbox, this thing
space not checked.
If you see the checkbox behavior is still there while it is being read as radio.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Understood.
So I have to give JavaScript event handlers. I have to use up and down arrow keys to navigate within the radio buttons. And it should also announce 1 of 2, 2 of 2. That is so much of JavaScript. What happens is, see, a page that can just be 10 to 100 kilobytes will become 700, 800, 900 also, depending on how much JavaScript you put there. So on internet, the load speed matters, correct? You save time. The faster you show your customer can interact with your page, the faster they'll go through the sale process or the information that they want to get. So what happens is the more JavaScript you write, the more CSS. Again, you have to change the behavior. Along with behavior, you change the design. It will add all the code bloat.
Correct. Understood.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
Green radio button.
Okay, now,
Choose number of attendees grouping 1 5 checkbox checked.
so if I even press spacebar, nothing will happen because this is pure custom
Yes.
and we have to use all the handlers here. This one will down some water. Any questions still here?
Understood.
Utej, Suresh. I'm not sure
Got
who
it,
else is
Raghav.
there.
Clear. No questions.
Praise.
No, no questions. I understand.
We'll wrap the session today then. I'll
Desktop,
stop recording.
Outlook, file, Microsoft Teams,
That's the end of today's session.
Word 1 Run, Google Chrome.
If you like the video, do like and subscribe.